On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was assassinated along with his wife by a Serbian-supported militant. What followed was a chain reaction of political, diplomatic, and military decisions by European leaders that transformed a regional conflict in southeastern Europe into a full-scale global war. Encouraged by Germany, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia on July 28th. Russia stepped in to support Serbia, which in turn drew France into the conflict. Germany responded by declaring war on Russia on August 1st and on France on August 3rd. When Germany violated Belgium's neutrality and Britain grew concerned about rising German power in Europe, Britain and its empire entered the war on August 4th. These events were driven by deep-rooted fears, ambitions, and tensions among European powers. The decisions to go to war were influenced by rising nationalism, increasing militarism, imperial competition, and the struggle for dominance and influence. European leaders were prepared to fight to protect or expand their national interests, and their actions were shaped by a mix of long-term strategies, short-term pressures, domestic politics, earlier crises, and a complex system of rival alliances that had been forming over the previous 35 years. Europe before 1914. By 1914, Europe had become divided into two powerful and opposing alliance systems. The unification of Germany in 1871 significantly changed the balance of power across the continent. Positioned at the center of Europe, this newly unified nation quickly emerged as a dominant force. Its strength grew even further when Germany formed an alliance with Austria-Hungary in 1879, an agreement that Italy joined just 3 years later. As Germany's influence expanded, other nations grew increasingly concerned. In response to this rising power, Russia and France formed their own alliance in 1893. Meanwhile, Germany's determination to build a strong naval fleet sparked an intense arms race with Britain, placing serious strain on their relationship. For many years, Britain had viewed both France and Russia as potential threats. However, by 1904, Britain began to shift its approach, reaching agreements with both countries. These understandings were largely aimed at protecting its vast empire by resolving ongoing colonial conflicts and rivalries. This new and somewhat unexpected partnership between the three powers increased Germany's fear of being encircled by its rivals, further widening the gap between the major European nations. At the same time, imperial conflicts added fuel to the growing tensions and divisions. These rivalries became even more intense when Germany attempted to challenge France's move to take control of Morocco. In response, Britain stood firmly behind France, reinforcing the alliances and deepening the sense of opposition between the competing powers. A distant crisis. In the years leading up to the assassination of the Archduke, relations between Austria-Hungary and its neighbor Serbia had grown increasingly strained. Austria-Hungary viewed Serbia as a serious threat to the unity and stability of its diverse, multi-ethnic empire. Tensions escalated further after Austria-Hungary annexed Bosnia in 1908, a move that angered Serbia, which had its own ambitions of uniting the Slavic peoples of Southeast Europe. This clash of interests made the region highly unstable and politically sensitive. The situation became even more intense after the Balkan Wars of 1912 to 1913, which left Serbia stronger, larger, and more confident in its regional influence. Against this backdrop of rising tension, the crisis reached a breaking point on June 28, 1914, when a Bosnian Serb assassin shot and killed Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austrian throne. The assassin was 19-year-old Gavrilo Princip, one of a group of young conspirators who were determined to use violence to bring an end to Austro-Hungarian rule. Believing that Serbia had played a role in supporting the assassination, Austria-Hungary saw the killing of the Archduke as an opportunity to eliminate the Serbian threat once and for all. Europe takes sides. The crisis that unfolded in the summer of 1914 was not the first of its kind. In the early 20th century, Europe had faced several similar tensions, yet each time a large-scale war had been avoided. However, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand reignited long-standing rivalries, pushing tensions far beyond the Balkans. As the situation escalated, major powers began to take sides, offering their support either to Austria-Hungary or to Serbia. Austria-Hungary was well aware that any conflict with Serbia could draw in Russia, which considered itself the protector of Serbia. In response, Austria-Hungary sought reassurance from its closest ally. On July 5th, Germany pledged its full backing to Austria-Hungary, encouraging a strong and decisive response against Serbia. Both Austria-Hungary and Russia were driven by a shared fear that stepping back in the face of conflict would damage their credibility and weaken their status as great powers. As a result, their determination to stand firm only deepened the crisis. Germany's foreign policy was heavily influenced by its ambitions, its growing sense of isolation, and its fear of being encircled by rival powers. In this context, maintaining the strength and stability of Austria-Hungary, its only dependable ally, became a central priority. Preserving Austria-Hungary as a major power was therefore seen as essential to protecting Germany's own position in Europe. Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. With Germany's full backing, Austria-Hungary issued a harsh ultimatum to Serbia on July 23rd, deliberately setting the stage for war. The terms of the ultimatum were designed so that Serbia's sovereignty would be severely compromised if accepted in full, while any response short of unconditional agreement would provide Austria-Hungary with a pretext for military action. Serbia's reply accepted nearly all the demands, but refused to allow Austro-Hungarian officials to participate in the investigation of the Archduke's assassination. Austria-Hungary rejected this response, and on 28 July, it formally declared war on Serbia. Determined to act decisively, Austria-Hungary was fully aware that this move risked drawing in Russia, Serbia's ally. Yet confident in Germany's support, it was willing to take that risk. What had begun as a Balkan crisis now threatened to engulf the whole of Europe in war. Europe prepares for war. Throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries, European leaders believed that military strength was essential to being recognized as a great power. For Britain, the Royal Navy served as both its sword and shield. Across the continent, most nations maintained large standing armies through compulsory military service and invested heavily in arms programs. Detailed war plans were drawn up with the expectation that any conflict would be swift and decisive. However, not all powers were equally eager or prepared to go to war. By the summer of 1914, Germany relied on a single strategic plan: to quickly defeat France before turning its attention to Russia, France's ally. German politicians viewed the Balkan crisis as an opportunity to weaken Russia and France diplomatically, while German generals, alarmed by Russia's growing military power, were ready to act preemptively before the situation became even more dangerous. Europe goes to war. On July 30th, Russia ordered its forces to mobilize. While the Russians saw this as a precautionary measure in case war broke out, Germany interpreted it as a direct act of aggression against itself and Austria-Hungary. Germany's military strategy was highly time-sensitive, relying on the rapid defeat of France before Russia could fully mobilize its army. On July 31st, Germany issued an ultimatum demanding that Russia stand down. When the ultimatum expired without a reply the following day, Germany declared war on Russia and ordered its own general mobilization. France, aware that it faced the threat of German invasion, was determined to stand firm alongside Russia. Many French citizens also hoped that war might finally resolve old grievances with Germany dating back to the 1870s. On August 3rd, Germany declared war on France. During this escalating crisis, both Russia and France pressured Britain to join the conflict. However, Britain was under no formal obligation to intervene, according to its agreements with either nation. Britain agonizes over its position. Until late July 1914, Britain had remained largely distant from the escalating crisis in Europe. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand shocked the nation, but it was seen as a remote event, far removed from British concerns. As the crisis intensified, Britain's role remained uncertain. Many people opposed involvement, believing the conflict was a purely European affair. The British government itself was divided. Unlike Germany, where the military high command held enormous influence, Britain's civilian authorities retained final control over decisions about war. British foreign policy aimed to maintain a balance of power in Europe, while also protecting the nation's vast empire and vital sea trade. There was growing concern over Germany's rising dominance on the continent and its challenge to British industrial and imperial supremacy. Despite these looming threats, Britain's attention until late July was focused mainly on domestic issues. Social unrest, industrial disputes, political tensions, and the possibility of civil conflict in Ireland consumed much of the nation's energy, leaving foreign crises largely in the background. Britain takes action. From 24th July, British Foreign Secretary Sir Edward Grey sought to organize an international peace conference to prevent the crisis from escalating into war. While France agreed to his proposals, Germany refused to participate. On July 29th, Germany requested that Britain remain neutral in the event of a European war. Britain declined. A German victory in Western Europe, particularly along the Channel coast, would threaten both Britain's security and its vital trade routes. From 1st August, Britain took steps that moved it closer to full involvement in the conflict. The Royal Navy was mobilized, and Britain pledged to help protect the French coast from German aggression across the Channel. The following day, on August 2nd, the cabinet agreed that Britain would come to Belgium's defense if its neutrality was significantly violated. Germany invades Belgium. After declaring war on France, Germany was determined to follow its war plan, swiftly defeat France before turning its full attention to Russia. To do this, German troops needed to advance through Belgium, a move that directly violated Belgian neutrality, which had been guaranteed by a treaty signed in 1839 by the major European powers, including Britain. On the evening of August 2nd, 1914, Germany demanded permission for its troops to pass through Belgian territory. Belgium refused. Accepting Germany's request would have made Belgium complicit in the attack on France and partially responsible for violating its own neutrality, a step the nation was unwilling to take. Britain and its empire go to war. Germany's invasion of Belgium finally tipped the balance for Britain. At 2 p.m. on August 4th, Britain issued an ultimatum demanding that Germany withdraw its troops. By 11 p.m., the deadline had passed without a response. and Britain declared war. Britain's decision to enter the conflict was driven not only by broader anxieties about the European balance of power and national security, but also by Germany's violation of Belgian neutrality. By attacking a small, neutral nation, Germany cast itself as the clear aggressor, turning Britain's involvement into a moral duty to defend the rights of smaller states. With Britain and its empire joining the conflict, what had begun as a regional crisis in the Balkans became a truly global war. Leaders across Europe went to war with the support of their citizens, a crucial factor in Britain, where there was no compulsory military service and recruitment depended entirely on voluntary enlistment.